Hi, I'm Dr. Gwyn Erwin, and welcome back to my channel, Healing for Your Life. In a previous video, Organizing for the Creative Process Part 1, I began looking into what it takes to be organized so that you can be your fullest creative self. In that video, we covered the first of 5 domains. Domain 1 is all about preparation, and what we did in that video was to look at our inner world, how our mind works, how our nervous system works, and how to optimize ourselves internally, as well as begin to optimize our outer world in order to support our creativity. Now, I had thought at that time we would only need a two-part series on this, a mini-series on organizing for the creative process, but in preparing for part 2, I realized we probably have part 5s. So 2, 3, 4, 5. So we'll see how far we get. Today we're going to go into domain 2, and it is dedicated to the beginning of organizing for our creative projects. And I use the initials P.R.A.R.A, P.R.A.R.A, which is Projects Ra-Ra, to help us know what makes up getting ready to really support our projects. So the first step in project organizing, this is before you really do any projects, but you have projects in mind, whatever your field, painting, writing, crafting, planting, cooking, woodworking, whatever your creative bent is. The first thing is that you have to identify what the projects are made up of and what are not the action steps, not the fine details, but the overall big steps. Kind of where are you in this project? Are you just in the kind of beginning imagining stage, or are you already in the throes of it? So you want to first identify, that's the P, your projects and its large steps. The next thing, you want to figure out the ownership. Is this my project, or am I working on somebody else's project? Now, you can be creative either way. So you may be creative both ways. You may have to do projects for your work, but you also may have your own individual projects, and those you want to take ownership of because you want the freedom of having that ownership, but it comes with certain responsibilities and boundaries that are self-protective for that project, but also help you decide choices you're going to have to make along the way as far as sharing it or getting help on board, or if you want more of a team or if it wants to be more of an individual project. So your second step in projects is ownership. Then the third is you're going to figure out 5 areas for your projects in general, as well as specific projects that have to do with organizing them. The first is, where are you going to hold active projects? This is where the project resides when you're not working on it, and that it makes it easily retrieved. Now, some people use 3-ring notebooks. I use those. I prefer the Levenger Circa system, if you want to go to levenger.com. They are disc-bound notebooks and different size papers, so you can put a large piece of paper, 8.5 by 11, with a junior size on top of it, a little note card on top of that. You can easily pull them out, move them around as you need, and it's a wonderful organizing notebook system. Now, A.R.A.R.A, A-R-C, also makes a similar system. They are sold at Staples. But the Circa projects are very high quality. They have tremendous variety, beautiful paper. This is some of their paper with the Cornell note-taking system built in. Different colors and lots of different resources in terms of paperwork. You can also look at Martha Stewart. She has some of the disc-bound notebooks, but she doesn't have the kind of paper systems that Levenger has, or even ARC. Now, so I usually use one notebook per project, and then I get notebook dividers for the different sections of that project, and then I have my action step lists within those different tabbed sections. Now, they're great resources in terms of later storage because you may use some of those resources for another project. But I love that system. It's easy to pick up and take with you. Now, some people, of course, want a digital system. I've tried every project management system I think that exists. And there are a lot of good ones. Plan Plus online, but it's much more for corporate work. Intervals is another one for corporate work. Pagico is another good one. There are a lot of different project management systems. The one I use, because I am much more a single user, I have a small team, but I don't use my team on everything I do. So as a single entrepreneur and professional with my various career paths, I use Asana. And it's great across devices. It syncs beautifully. You can set it up exactly the way you want. And so I would recommend looking into that as well. So you want to create an active storing place for your projects when you are not working on them that are easily retrieved. And for that, I mainly use the Levenger Circus system. And then I use Asana as well. The next organizational tool you will need is projects that are in process. Now, they're going to hold the ones that you're working on, but you need a large place, so this is where you can do your active storing. And there are two things that I use. One is I use a project sorter. Now, it's like a magazine sorter. You can get them, they're like cubbies, and they're a little bit bigger than 8.5 by 11, and they have anywhere from 6 cubbies to 8 cubbies. You can get a couple of them and stack them. Mine is a wooden one I got from Costco years ago. It has 16 openings in them, and they dovetail with my notebooks. So the same projects that I'm working on with all my notebooks, I also have in cubbies. And so I can easily keep my projects in there, just pull out the file folders that I need, or even the notebook, and work from there. And they're all there, readily accessible and visual. One of the things that creative people need is to be able to see their products, because out of sight, out of mind. Creatives are very visual, and it's hard if they're stuck away in a filed box or file cabinet, unless you really prefer that and have some of that left brain good organizational activity. It's hard to retrieve things. And so it's also difficult to have to put everything away every time you work on it and then bring everything out again. So if my project, if I'm working on a book, which I am, I'm working on 3 of them actively right now, with a few other projects incubating. I also have a set of architectural blueprint drawers. There are 6 very large drawers in this cabinet, and I can have lots of small piles spread out in the drawers so I see exactly where I am and what I'm doing, and then I have my cubbies on top of that. So I recommend those 2. Now, you also need a tool for safekeeping. And so again, those cubbies or the blueprint drawers are wonderful for that, because you can close the drawer, but you label the drawer or you label the cubby, and when you pull it out, everything is available. But it makes it confidential and it keeps it safe. Now, confidentiality is important for a couple of reasons. One is what you're working on. You may not want to be you may not be ready to expose that to the general public or even to your near and dear yet, because you are working on it. You don't want to drain the energy out of it. But you also don't want what you can see, you don't necessarily want everybody else to see. I've had 2 books stolen from me. One was taken off the shelves at Barnes & Noble and everywhere else within 24 hours once they received my documentation. The book was never seen again, that somebody stole from me. The other one we couldn't ever really trace it's how that happened, so I couldn't do much about that one. But you want to protect your work. It is your intellectual property, and you have the right to protect it because you are creating it. So whatever holding and in-process tools you use, make sure that they are protective of your projects. The next tool you need is tracking, and this is where Asana is great. Or any good project management tool that you happen to like, because you want to know where you are in any one project and where you're going, not only in terms of the next thing you're going to do, but the timing involved, deadlines involved, planning your blocks of time when you're going to be free to work on something. And I also use a large cork board, probably 6 by 4 feet, and I use map pins in different colors that stand for different points in the process, so I know if I'm beginning something, just dreaming about it. I've actually started writing. I'm in a 2nd draft, I'm in a 3rd draft, I'm in a 7th draft. I know which ones I'm doing. I know if I need research. So you can take a large board like this and just put up rows of sticky notes or pin notes or index cards, and that's another way to visually lay out a project for yourself. And then finally, you want to make sure that everything can be retrieved easily, that it isn't put away out of sight, out of mind, and that what you need, you can grab a hold of. So the other thing about retrieval is this: when you're working on a project, if you have to stop for a day or a night or a few hours or a week, stop in the middle of what you're doing, the middle of a sentence, the middle of a paragraph, the middle of the page, the middle of a painting, somewhere where you know where you're going to go next, so that when you return to your project, you're not having to say, now wait, what was I doing and what was I thinking about and where am I going? You'll know exactly where you want to pick up that project. Okay, the R in domain 2 stands for resources, and resources are everything you need that support your projects. So the cubbies, the drawers, everything that we've been talking about. And your question you want to ask all the time is, if I need it, can I find it? And if you can't, change your system. This is very individualized. It needs to be shaped for you and for your sensibilities and the way you function and for your physical environment. In terms of research, keep everything together with that project. Don't just have general files of research. Have your research connected to the project you need it for. Okay, the next is action steps. An action step is a one something, begun and completed in one time frame. A project is many somethings completed over a small or a large time frame. So an action steps takes you from this point to that point. And if there's one that comes before, you do the one that comes before, and then the one that comes before, and they all add up. Usually, action steps will need to be calendared. Not always. but you might just know that you have a block of project time on a Sunday afternoon from 2 to 5. And then you have a list of action steps under your projects, and you start dealing with each of those action steps. David Allen, in Getting Things Done, is a great resource. It can get a little complicated. Again, he was dealing with corporate people, corporate organizations, large teams. And so if you're an individual, a creative individual, all of this is going to need to be shaped and brought down to your individual level and what works for you. It's another reason I like Asana. Even though it's for a team, it works beautifully for an individual. Then the R in P.R.A.R.A is for reference. This is not storage. It is part of your resources. And again, it has to be stored in a valuable and accessible way. Reference has value over time. You may have all kinds of resources. You may have interviews with people. You may have tools you need. You may have media, different mediums that you need for your project. But reference is more of your research type of work, especially if you're a writer. So again, use the tools that we've set up, the cubbies, the drawers, an action board, to keep track of all of your reference material. And lastly, you have archiving. So this is storage. It has lasting value. If it doesn't, get rid of it. Shred it and get rid of it. Keep it in waterproof and munch-proof containers. And when I say munch-proof, little mice can get into your garage. You want it, plastic bins that the rain can't get in and little critters can't get in. And then keep a reference list, either in paper, in a project book, or digitally, so that you know where you have put that material, especially if you need it for other projects, okay? Lastly, think of a mental butterfly net. As you're working on a project, I don't care what project it is, you are going to get ideas either for that project or for other projects. Have a way to capture them. I don't care if it's a note system like Evernote on your computer, or if it's a paper note, but have a note system so that you can capture, those ideas, because you probably will not remember them. And I have more often than not fooled myself thinking this is such a great idea. There is no way in the world that I could forget it. And I do. And that's just kind of tragic. So have a butterfly net to catch your ideas in. And remember that redundancy is your friend. Now, I want to point out a couple of other resources before I end today. If you need professional help organizing, I recommend, if you're on the West Coast, Noreen Burke, call Clutter Fairy. They're professional organizers all over the country. She's a particular California gem. We collaborate with one another. She's a wonderful human being and immensely talented. There's Marie Kondo's book, The Magic of Tidying Up. And then there's a wonderful course online that I've done called Learn, Do, Become, the Step Mastery Course. Now, it's an investment of time. It will take you a couple of months. You may not need every bit of it, but it is terrific. And April and Eric, who have been doing this for about 10 years, have put together a wonderful program that's immensely helpful. And so I recommend that as well. Well, that gets us started on Domain 2. With our projects, our resources, our action steps, reference, and archiving. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video on time management, the big problem most of us have to deal with. Bye. See you soon.